All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Frank Brinkkemper, and I'm from a Dutch software company called Topicus. We're a company of about 1,000 people, mostly software developers, and we're creating software for the, for example, in the finance industry. We have Topicus Finance, which has about 400 of the 1,000 employees. And we make software for large banks and large financing industries. Also, hello to all my colleagues in Deventer watching the live stream. Shout out. So, at our company, we did a successful ICO within among employees with real euros, and we transformed it to a legal STO. And in this talk, I'll talk about this process, about the journey we've made. So first, a little bit about the goal of our company. We want to democratize the finance world. And I think that's also a goal of the whole decentralized finance movement that's happening here in Paris. To give an example of what we do, we have democratized money through a crowdfunded mortgage. It's a mortgage that every Dutch person can really apply for now. It's called Jungo. If you want to know more about that, go to jungo.nl. It's in Dutch, sadly, but it's really awesome. So for the vision of our ICO, we wanted to decentralize lease funding. So there's a startup within Topicus, it's called LeaseDeal, and we wanted to give the startup some capital so that they could fund lease assets. And we wanted to democratize the funding so that the funding goes directly from the investor to the leased assets. So there's some advantages to this because, we see the advantage that you democratize the funding, you create a standard token for the whole lease market, and you create tokens with real underlying value. And especially at the moment that we started this, there weren't many tokens that had underlying value. But there's also a disadvantage that it's quite a big leap from the current state of the art in the lease market. So explaining this to people was already difficult, but yeah, so we thought, let's take baby steps. Let's try to create a fair token for users and for investors, so a fair system, but also let's create it so that it really has underlying value. And our journey consists of three phases. The first phase was the phase before the ICO, where we were brainstorming about how we should do this. And then we launched the ICO in June last year, and in December of last year, we launched the STO. So the first concept, how did it work? Investors invest in asset classes. So we, on the slides here, we show 3 asset classes, and the lease company, LeaseDeal, they trade the euros for tokens, and they transfer the euros into assets. So for example, let's take the last one, a hospital bed for a hospital. So the idea was that you have different asset classes that you can invest in. One asset class could have a totally different value than another because a hospital has a different risk profile than, for example, a bar or a hotel or a farm. So this was the first concept, and we were pretty excited about it. And we were thinking about the token economics of this prototype, and we came up with this. So, for example, in the case of the hospital or the bar, I see we use the bar icon. There's a variable monthly income from the lessees. It's variable because there might be defaults. If there are no defaults, then it's just a fixed amount of income. And the income goes in the asset class smart contract, and from that smart contract, it goes into the Gnosis Dutch X. We were inspired last year at EthCC by their mechanism, so we thought, hey, let's integrate with them. And then investors have about 24 hours every month to return tokens, and then the Gnosis Dutch X mechanism finds a price and it executes, and then the euros go back to the investors and the tokens are burned that we bought back. However, we changed it up a little bit. The reason was that at the internal ICO, we only wanted to raise 100,000 euros. And if you want to raise 100,000 euros and you want to spread that among different asset classes, then you get really tiny market caps for each asset class. So we decided that there would be just one single lease fund. And that lease fund would decide which assets to buy, and it wouldn't matter anymore if it would just be, for example, 100 hospital beds. So, yeah, it wouldn't matter anymore in which assets the funding would go. And we also changed up the investing concept. We really like the Dutch X mechanism, but the problem with it is it's really hard to explain to regular investors. And even harder to explain to people who don't regularly invest. And the people, the employees at Topicus aren't all active investors, but we wanted them all to be involved in the project. So we changed it up, and we made it to a more something more familiar. Oh yeah, so we also changed the lease fund, the asset class to lease fund, but also the mechanism. We changed it to a buyback smart contract, and in the buyback smart contract, the price is known at for every month, and it's made through an annuity function. And we just modeled a loan annuity function in the smart contract. It's a really straightforward function. Most mortgages work with annuity. It's that you pay a lot of interest in the first month, and in the last month of the loan, you pay only a little bit. And we also changed it up from 24 hours to a whole month, that the investors could put back tokens, because now it's just every month the price changes a little bit. It rises a little bit, and yeah. But here still, there's a variable amount of income from the lessees, because we still modeled defaults in the smart contract. So whenever there would be defaults, there would be less euros available in the smart contract for that month to buy back tokens with. So with this version, we launched our ICO, and we successfully got 100,000 euros from our employees. We used a payment service provider called Molly to get the money. And that's where the fun part began, because in the description of the payment, we put up the 3 letters that that weren't very smart, namely ICO. And then we were called by Molly, "What are you doing?" And we said, "We're doing an ICO." And they said, "Is that regulated by the Dutch financial authorities?" And we said, "Well, we don't need to, because we're below the 5 million mark, and below 5 million, you don't need to be regulated." And they said, "Well, we want to hear that from the Dutch financial authorities." So we were like, "All right, that's fine. let's go there. And we went to the Dutch financial authorities. And in the talks with them, they had a problem that they couldn't fit our system into their legal frameworks. So they have a legal framework for a bond, they have a legal framework for a share, a legal framework for crowdfunding, and we were a combination of those three things. And that is illegal in the Netherlands. So we must stop it, they said. And then we were like, hell, wait, we don't want to stop this. This is, in our opinion, the future. So what can we do to mitigate, what can we do to fit in one of these frameworks? So we decided, based on our concept, that we wanted to be a bond. So we wanted to fit in the bond legal framework. So what did we need to do? We needed, for a bond, the investors shouldn't have any risk based on which asset classes you choose for a lease company. So instead of investing in purely the lease fund, you invest in the full lease company. And the lease company can just decide themselves in which asset classes they go. And the Dutch financial authorities were fine with this, because now you're investing in the lease company, and the lease company decides the assets. And because the lease company decides, instead of the fund, you're a bond. But it also meant that the buyback mechanism couldn't rely on the defaults anymore. So right now, there's a fixed monthly income from the lessees if the cash flow allows. So the risk is not anymore, the risk for the investor is not whether a single hospital, for example, doesn't pay back their loan interests. The risk for the investor is whether the lease company is solvable or not. So the risk profile changed from a single asset to the whole company. And then again, the Dutch financial authorities were fine with this mechanism. Yeah, so the lease company. So what did we learn in this process? Well, actually, that security token offerings have real added value. And how exactly? In our opinion, it's that the security token offers, of course, the decentralized, they're decentralized, but also you automate part of the processes from doing an offering of a bond, for example. So the decentralization provides added value and the automation, but furthermore, the technical work we learned is the least time consuming. The most time consuming is all the legal and regulatory work, because you have to set up all these, you have to gather all the information, and you have to supply all the information to the Dutch Financial Authority. And we also learned that this legal work is pretty hard to automate. So for almost every STO, for example, will need to talk to the regulators and to hand over their documents so that they can regulate your STO. And I'm really curious into how we as a community can automate this process. Furthermore, we believe that the financial authorities need to form an opinion so that this gray area that's hanging above STOs dissolves and is either black or white. You don't want to do something and that you later hear from the authorities that you were doing something illegal. We aren't trying to do something illegal. We are trying to do something fair for investors and for users. So we want to show that to people, but we still want to not end up in jail. But another lesson we learned is that we are now, as our bond really relies on the longevity of the platform of Ethereum. And it's currently pretty hard to make a good, hard, based on evidence, arguments about whether Ethereum will be here in 10 years. And for example, a Nasdaq or the Dutch exchanges, they really have a lot in place to make sure that they don't just dissolve. They have all these trusted third parties, and you might think that as something bad, but it's also there to enable this longevity. So, in our opinion, what are the next steps for the STO market? Well, first, the standards really need to be finalized. And in my opinion, they really need to be finalized on every local regulatory level. So for every local regulation, there needs to be someone who ticks off that the standard is fine according to, for example, the bonds in the Netherlands, but also bonds in Germany, and every financial authority needs to check the box. It's also important to create interoperable backbones, because for our STO, only employees from our company could join, and there's a whitelist in the smart contract. But it would be nice if you could trade, for example, our STO for another STO if you're whitelisted in both. But it's really important that the technology allows that. And of course, it's also important to educate the market, but stay realistic. Don't recite the hype stories of 2017. Really explain why decentralization is important and why it adds value. And for us at Topicus, what we're doing in this space is we're finding and partnering with people in the space to really see how can we move this all forward. Furthermore, we want to continue the conversation with the legislators and the financial authorities to maybe also innovate on help them innovate on their part, maybe help them innovate in the automation of the clearings of STOs, and we want to integrate with existing software. So why do we need to build whole new exchanges when there are perfectly fine working exchanges? We want to integrate on those parts. So that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I want to end with this note that, in our opinion, security token offerings are merely partially automated public offerings. Thank you all for your attention. Are there any questions?
Oh, yes. Thank you for your presentation, and very simple question. What is your goal for this project? What do you expect to have as the end of your project, of your investigation?
Sorry, I didn't hear it clearly. What's my role in the project?
No. What's your goal? What do you expect to have as the result of this project?
Yes. So for us at Topicus, this was really to get to know the STO market. So that was our goal. And right now, the investors are actually making profit on the assets that the lease company has bought. So for the investors, it has already been profitable, so we're fine on that part. But we're still learning on on really the regulation side of things. How can we automate there? So our goal is to, for example, enable smaller and medium enterprises to have an SEO. So the global goal is to lower costs of doing an IPO. Yes.
Hi, I'd like to ask, thank you for your presentation. My question is, for the legal section, how long did it take you to complete that gathering information process and engaging with that, the regulatory authority? How long did that process take?
Yes. Well, it started in June of last year, and it ended in December last year. So it was, what's that? That's about 6 months. But that has mostly to do with that you set up meetings with the authorities, and in our case, it took about 3 weeks every time to talk with them. And yeah, you have to form an opinion yourself, so yeah, that's why it took so long. And also, we didn't work full-time on this project. It was, for a few people, it was a part-time project, aside from their normal day-to-day job at Topicus.
We'll take one last question.
So you talked about synchronizing the whitelists of different STO tokens. How do you imagine the exchangeability and tradability of these tokens to work? And do you have any problems with regulations regarding the trading of these securities?
Well, I think, for example, if a standard would be made per country, then if you are KYC'd in for an STO in the Netherlands for STO X, and you want to participate in Y, then you're already KYC'd for X, so you should just be able to use it for STO Y. But if you want to invest in a German STO as a Dutch person, yeah, there are different laws there, so you would also need to go through the KYC there. Or there should become some global framework for KYC in every country and look at the similarities and the differences and make sure that the standard really complies to all. But in my opinion, it's quite difficult to do that. So I heard that's the last question, so I want to thank you all and see you next time.